David Webb is on the line with us. He's a conservative host with the David Webb Show on SiriusXM Patriot Channel 125 at 9 p.m. Eastern Time weekdays. He's also a Fox News contributor. His website, David Webb, WEBB show.com. And David, welcome. David?
How are you doing, Thom?
I'm fine, and I understand you're at Normandy right now.
Well, I'm actually now in Pickersville. I was in Normandy this morning at Omaha Beach where the president and Francois Hollande spoke, and it was an amazing gathering, thousands. I can't even count the sea of people that were there.
Yeah. It is an extraordinary. When you consider on this day 70 years ago, you had 156,000 airborne, 73,000 U.S. troops, 6,600 of them died. 21,000 Canadians, 946 of them died. 61,000 British, 2,700 died. The sacrifice was mind-boggling, and of course, after the war, we got our POWs back from both countries, which raises the question, David. I'm curious your take on how Bo Bergdahl is being trashed by Republicans and conservatives. I don't get it.
Well, for one, and I want to separate the two. This is not politics. This Normandy and where I am is not about politics. And I don't actually want to connect the two things.
Well, actually, this is. I think you're making my point. I don't understand why bringing home a prisoner of war as a war is being wound down is political.
If you want to talk about D-Day, let's talk about D-Day. The Bo Bergdahl thing is a separate issue. It's an American issue. What I'm here to do is something that involves the entire, if you want to call it that, the entire world. People that have come here from nations everywhere to talk about an issue or at moments in time 70 years ago when people came together and when they fought against fascism. There are 90-plus-year-old men here. There are daughters, granddaughters, sons, nephews, relatives of many who stormed the beaches on D-Day. I'm standing here with literally hundreds of German, French, and American troops that are all at this dinner, and they're all here to honor this in this town of Pickersville, because all across this part of the world right now, this part of France, people are remembering what happened 70 years ago.
Right. Okay. You don't want to discuss Bo Bergdahl. I got it.
I think it takes away from what we're here to do.
Okay, then let me share a thought with you. It seems to me, I lived in Germany for a year, and I speak German, and when I was living there back in the 80s, I knew some old Nazis, literally, and in fact, one who still thought that, the biggest mistake that Hitler made was invading Russia a year too early. In other words, he was an unrepentant Nazi. And there are still some in Germany. In fact, there's a rising movement of them. And it seemed to me that what had happened in both Germany and Japan in the 30s was that a cult, the cult of emperor worship in Japan, the cult of Fuhrer worship, and the Nazis had their own religion, the SS with all their symbology and the death's head and all this kind of stuff, that cults had basically taken over the governments and the minds of the people of these two nations. And that after the war, when the cults were shattered, the people looked around at each other and said, "Holy cow, how could we have done this?" And they just kind of woke up from the trance that they had been in as a result of having been taken over by the cult. I'm curious your thoughts on that analysis. This is my own theory here.
Well, look, there always will be people. It doesn't matter what generation we're in the world, who are wrong, whether it's fascism in some form, racism in any form. The good thing, if you want to look at it this way, is that they will die off. And as we march on in civilization, it seems as if there are less and less of them. There are periods of surges and not. Those Germans you met, there are also on the other side of that so many Germans who had no choice. And they were conscripted into an army to fight. And many of them also, as you study the history of this accurately, also, when it was over, walked away and said, "What has happened here? This was so wrong."
Right.
Those are the people that will fight against that cult. It'll take, just like in any other group, I think, when the ones that want fairness, freedom, think of the civil rights movement in America, fight against the people that say no. When it happens within the culture, that's where you destroy that kind of evil, where it stands. And sadly, the reality is there will always be some form of it that exists in the world.
Yeah, I don't disagree at all. Armin Lehman was a dear friend of mine. He passed away a few years ago. Armin wrote a book about this called Hitler's Last Courier, and Armin and I used to teach workshops back in the 80s, all around the world actually. And he was 16 years old, and he was the courier. Maybe he was 15. He was the courier who hand-delivered to Adolf Hitler in the Fuhrer bunker the note from the general saying we've basically lost the war, and he stood outside the room when Hitler committed suicide, and he devoted his life to trying to bring peace to the world. It was amazing. I mean, he came to America like many Germans did, became an American citizen. Lived in the Pacific Northwest, where I used to live in Portland. He lived just down the road from us, and his wife is kind of carrying on some of that work. But there are a lot of good people who, this never forget thing. If you've ever been through the Holocaust museums in Jerusalem or here in Washington D.C.
I've been through both.
As have I, and this never forget. I mean, we really need to, conservatives, liberals, all of us, we really need to hold this, I think. And
it's up to people and cultures to do that. Look, I'm standing 20 feet from a very good friend of mine, Helen Patton, granddaughter of General Patton, and we're about to go in here and do a ceremony. Not only look at what her grandfather stood for, he believed and he fought. He died on this continent. There are so many examples of people that have fought against evil in our lives that they need to, and just like Helen's doing, looking for reconciliation, looking to bring Germans, French, Americans again. I'm looking literally at a sea of burgundy berets, of German soldiers, of French soldiers, of airborne and paratroopers from Germany, as a matter of fact, that are here literally. I think we have a count of over 600 combined troops tonight where I am. You take that and you move forward and you say,
it's impressive stuff.
Never forget our history.
David,
move forward.
A quick question. We just have a minute. We have hard breaks here. We just have a minute. One of the fastest growing political movements in Europe right now is the fascist movement, is the reinvention of the Nazi movement in Greece, in a much smaller way in Germany, but particularly in Greece. What's your take on that?
It's something that needs to be stomped out.
Has anybody discussed that in these commemorations?
No, it has not been discussed here. But you're right. We're fascism in any form, whether it's radical Muslims, fascism in Greece, Chavez in Venezuela, communists in Cuba, where any of those occur, we have to fight against it.
Yeah, cults. I mean, we could. Chavez is dead, but Castro's damn near dead. And I'm not going to defend the regimes.
And the results of his regime are starving people without medical care, broken country in Venezuela, and yet there are Americans like Sean Penn who went out and supported this dictator who destroyed a country.
Yeah.
We've got to fight against this.
I was in Venezuela when Chavez was first overthrown. It didn't quite look that way to me, but anyhow, David Webb, host of the David Webb Show, davidwebbshow.com. Thanks, David.
Thank you.